Bryce is looking for is the link that I've sent you through where it said Martin Johnson has shared with you a board called the Financial Impacts of Innovation. I'm now going in to just check it's been sent to Bryce, and I can actually confirm that it hasn't, which is why it hasn't got it on its board.
Yeah, you clicked on the last one, Bryce.
Yeah, I wasn't sure that we were going to have a campfire or whether it was Smurf or whether we were
No. Okay. So I'm sending
You
this
just
through
wanted
now.
to see people in dresses, didn't you?
Yeah, that's come through now, Bryce. So that should appear immediately on your dashboard. Now, for everybody else, this isn't mandatory. However, I don't want you to feel you're missing out. What I mean by that is when you see us working away on the board, I will share it on screen and you'll wonder to yourself, how is it that we can all work on the same board? And it's because if I've got your email address up front, what I can do is send you an invite into the board so you can move the symbols around. Okay, so that's what we're doing when we talk about working in a collaborative space. And that's how we're going to work through today's topic of the impact, the financial impact of innovation. And there's a way we do that. And we do this each week with Big Picture. It's a way of us coming together for a conversation from different aspects and perspectives of the business. It could be within an organization. It could be us as a group of suppliers or consultants helping an organization. The fact is, when we come together to talk about a business, it's important we all use the same language. And this material, this mass and collateral you see around me, all over my desk and behind me, are these props and these symbols. And these symbols all mean something. So there's a few of us who are new to Big Picture. What I want to do is to just, for a couple of minutes before we go to Hugh, and Hugh's going to take us through today, he's the finance lead at Your Big Pick. We're going to be supported with, as Bryce calls them, the sage on the stage. Carl is with us today, and he's going to help us offer a view from an accountancy finance perspective. We're always interested in different angles and perspectives. All I would say to you is, please be present for this session and try not to be distracted, and also try not to be uncomfortable if you get a little bit confused, because if it's new to you and there are some new ways of thinking and doing things, that's okay. Take some time to have a think about what someone's saying in connection to the symbols, and only when you feel comfortable and natural do you need to chip in and maybe bring some symbols on. And clearly this is just a point in time. It's a very fast simulation. You may find the pace is a bit too fast. We look at some subject content, which is around the robotics and innovations, and we're going to link it to financial impacts in particular sectors and businesses. And we're going to do all that in a very short space of time. We'll finish formally by 2:45, and we will stay on the line till 5. So if you have got something and you need to drop off straight after, that's absolutely fine. A bit of background for those new to Big Picture, and if you're watching the recording, you'll notice I've turned the recording on. Next Monday or Tuesday, you'll get a cut down version of the edit. If there's anything in there that you've been included in, congratulations. I will ask if you're okay with it. Assume that you're not in it if you don't hear, but I will send you a link to the outputs in the form of a blog at yourbigpick.com/blog. It then goes out on the company page later in the week. We are showcasing here the kind of conversations that Big Picture supports within businesses. And today I'm just going to start with the finance offer here. You'll notice just coming up on my screen, if you pin this screen or my screen by going into the top right, it'll appear as big as you want. We have the 6 offers in there. So we've got the finance offer that we're focusing in on today, but then other weeks, if you join a Your Big Pick session, then other weeks you could come on board and we might be looking at performance, we might be looking at change, learning, onboarding and strategy. So these are the areas where Big Picture specializes in. So if you do like what you see or you're interested in joining another session, then please do come along. I've sent you a prop. Again, I'm trying to increase interactivity, maximize engagement, and allow you to think independently. I gave you a link in the email if you received it to this prop. This is the way Big Picture laid out. You'll notice it's grayed out. You're meant to kind of add over the top of it. So I'm offering you a framework to work within. On this prop, you've got the purpose of a business at the top. And I want you to really latch onto that, because when we get into the sectors and the exercise that we're going to do, I want you to think about a particular business. It might be from your experience of your own work. It might be one that you're familiar with. It might be your own business, if that sector comes up today when Hewell takes us through it. In the center of the page, you have the operations area, which is delivery, which is where the value is created. And you'll notice that lovely yellow symbol in the center. We use the yellow symbol for the customer journey. And on the left, we've got marketing, and to the right, customer care. At the bottom, we've got management and administration. So I'm going through this quite quick. If you're new to this, just think, oh, that's a department I actually know a little bit about. And you'll see with our different levels of familiarity, people being able to interact with that. You've also probably heard me talking about symbols. So we have different symbols to represent things. So if you're new to this, if you start seeing these funny symbols to pop up, what do they all mean? And this is my 20, 25 or so years working as a business analyst, thinking we can strip out of all this language that no one gets. We just need to really focus on some key things. We need to focus on the team. Who are the team? This is the red symbol. So if you are on the digital kit and you are somewhat of an advanced user, please go onto the board as usual and bring on your team symbol and place it on the board. If you're unable to do that in any way, or that doesn't make sense, that's absolutely fine. Some of you will be able to do that because we're all at different levels of familiarity. That red symbol is the team symbol, so that could be you. If you drag the symbol on, please do click on the, double click it, go to the pen, which is the third box along, and change the name on it. And I'll be sharing the screen so that people can see as we go. This is the yellow symbol. I've mentioned it already. This is the customer. This is the client. This is who we create the value for in this business. And we love the customer or client journey running left to right, spearing through the business from not knowing anything about the business to consuming lots of value in the center of the business, and then to the right, for whatever reason, breaking off that transaction and then coming back again. This is a symbol we'll use today. This is the measure symbol. So when we talk about financial impact, I'm all for breaking down complexity and breaking it into symbols. Measure is going to be how we're going to measure impact today. So I will be asking you to think about the measure symbol. And money, here it is, the finance. So we've got the financial impact. I want to use a combination of measure and money. And I want you to drag those symbols and place them somewhere on the board to measure that. We won't really talk about process, but it's an example of, if we had more time, we might say, well, the impact is X. That means we need to bring in a new process. And that's one of the 6 key big picture symbols, but we probably won't cover it today. The whole idea with these symbols is that once we have a great conversation about that, we can talk about challenges and opportunities. So if 1 or 2 of those pop up today, as we're talking about the financial impact of innovation, please drag on and place them somewhere on the board. And this is the opportunity symbol. We like these because opportunities are the kind of ideas we're going to take forward. And if we probably won't get time today, but there's a way of prioritizing them. So what you've seen there are the symbols that represent big picture. So if we, for instance, if I share with you my screen of the board here and go into the board, you can see you're all shared there. Don't know if there's been any action in there, but actually, if this just comes up in a moment, here we are. This is the board that I'm talking about. So I can see that Hugh and Nick up in the top left have dragged themselves on. They've done that by going to this drawer. They've dragged themselves on, and then they've double clicked, typed that, and click their name. So I'm going to put myself in partners and suppliers for now. So if you do want to get involved and try, whilst you're listening to Hewell's intro, try to go to that email. I don't mind you multitasking at all. We can do that. Find the email, get into your dashboard, go into the spanner here, drag on a team symbol, and then when I ask you about robotics and innovation and opportunities, you can actually play a part of the session. So at this point, I'll stop sharing that so we can focus on Hewell and his introduction. So I'll hand over Hewell to take us through some of the inputs from today for 10 or so minutes, and then we'll get into the exercise and we'll pick up from there. So let's go.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin, for all of that. Hope everybody's comfortable with the board and everything. So I'm Hugh Griffiths. I'm the finance lead for Big Pick. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about robotics. The first thing I'd like to do is just to ask, can anybody give me any idea how long the robotics industry has been going? What sort of answer would you give if somebody gave you that question? Anybody want to say anything? What do you reckon? Go on then, Nick.
I guess at about 90 years.
90 years. Okay, that is
Yeah,
a
I
good.
would say 90 to 100 years, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of people, when you mention the word robotics, they think that robotics is something that is fairly new. It isn't. But, I come from a farming industry, and my father started work as a milkman in 1938, and when he did start, he was using his hands. By the time the 1950s had come along, Alfa Laval had invented this robotics instrument so that he didn't have to use his hands. He just put it on the cows and off we go. And all of this has been going on for many, many years. It's just that a lot of people haven't understood it. Now, at this moment in time, it is a huge industry. If you have a look there on the left-hand side, 2019, it was 12.9 billion. 2023, it is estimated to be 29.9 billion. And all of that is around these industries I'm talking about, either agriculture, consumer, healthcare, and industrial. So if we have a little bit more of a look at where that money is going, it'll tell you in this slide.
We can see your slide. Hugh, can you just check that on the share? Just go on share screen and try that again.
Okay. Let's go back to.
There's too much good stuff on it, and I want people to be able to consume it in the best way possible.
Yeah. Share screen.
No.
There we go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's coming now.
Yeah, that's grand.
Oh, look at that.
So maybe
Oh,
just
wow.
check. Yeah, maybe just check that first slide again, just so people
No problem.
consumed it.
Yeah, there we are then. Okay. So as I was saying, the amount of money that we're talking about there is all sort of divided into these huge robotic industries: agriculture, consumer, healthcare, and industrial. And then I went on to talk about this one because this tells us a little bit more, and it's given us a little bit more of a downside on where that money is going. So, for example, manufacturing robots. 142 billion in 2017, 275, 8% growth. The ones that really interest me are further down this list
Professional service.
because it's personal and domestic service and professional service robots. Now, the industry is a lot smaller at the moment, but have a look at the growth. The potential growth by 2027 is 35% or 45%. And the forecast for the whole of the industry is 76.8 billion by 2027. Now, the reason that I'm really interested in those areas is because there are a lot of businesses, local businesses and businesses that we might be familiar with that could actually tap into those industries to see if they could get more work from the robotics industry. And that is what I want us to be thinking about when we go through this challenge today. So if you have a look there, you'll see that we've got banking and finance, agriculture and rural development, entrepreneurship, industry and trade, economic modeling and tourism, and environment and green marketing. These aren't really involved as much in robotics at the moment as the other industries that I pointed out. And I'm just wondering if we between us can think of how can these industries get more and more involved and obviously make more money from an industry that is at this moment in time generating a huge amount of finance. So the idea is that if you choose one of those sectors, so we'll give you time to think about those sectors now. If you choose one of those sectors and start putting some information onto the board about those sectors, and then we will go on and have the conversation between us. While you're doing that, if you want to be putting things onto the board, has anybody got any questions before we start having the full discussion. Anybody got any thoughts on these sectors that we're going to be talking about?
The focus areas again, please, Hugh.
Yeah, banking and finance, agriculture and rural development, entrepreneurship, industry and trade, economic modeling and tourism, the environment and green marketing. So if you want to see yourself in any one of those sectors, what do you think is happening now, and what can we do in the future to help businesses in those industries get more from the robotics situation? Any
Also,
thoughts?
just as a passing thought, Hugh,
Mhm.
the Luddites only started destroying machines in Lancashire and so on 204 years ago. And John Kay, who invented the flying shuttle, had to flee from Lancashire to Leeds. He probably lives next door to Martin now. Because
I did.
because so we mustn't downplay the impact of potential resistance to some of these robotics, because I mean, as I say, it was only 204 years ago that they were rampaging through your country, destroying any machine in any mill that they could get to. So we still, you know, there's still a memory bank out there, probably of people whose grandparents were in that industry, who probably feel a little sensitive about any further robotization.
Well, even in the simplest term, there are still people who don't want to use credit cards. You know, I mean, robotics, the robotics industry still includes things like using cards instead of money, using software instead of spreadsheets like Carl does. I mean, not being in a classroom together today, but being on Zoom is also part and parcel of being of robotics. And of course, the biggest one for us today is that we're using Big Pick as a robotic instrument here today, because we are doing digital boards. We're using digital boards instead of, you know, writing on paper or whatever. So,
Hewell, can
yes.
I come in there? I've just popped a raised hand.
You have.
Just picking up on that notion, there was the threat a few years ago of getting rid of checks, but I can see that even more so. I mean, I think this is quite likely to raise its head again in the banking and financing space when you think about all that's been happening over these recent months. So I've actually already put that one as technology on the board, as we'll be dumping checks.
But can I just build on that just for a moment? In this country, from January 1, banks will not accept checks. In South Africa,
Right.
January 1, no, you can't write one, and they won't process one. January 1.
Excellent. And just, may I ask a question, Hugh? I got thinking about robotic. What does what is a robot? Is it anything that is technology that performs a task? Is that too generic, or can we go more detailed than that?
No, in fact, what it is a replacement of something that was done previously by hand. Anything that replaces or simplifies the means of getting an activity completed.
That's interesting, because I was reaching down a definition, but you've actually raised it up a definition. So it's the word replace is the word that I've underlined in my head. And what just might help people, and all these questions are useful clarifications as we develop our thinking in our own way, is the business types. What I'm going to be asking you to do is take one of these sectors and pick a particular business within that sector, or the sector might be sufficient. So I do want you to identify one and kind of stick to it. And I'm wondering how easy that has been for people so far. Has anybody got any questions about the particular hexagons that sit around the center with regard to a business type? Is anyone stuck for a business type, or is it being fairly straightforward to pick one?
You okay, Andrea?
And Andrea, again, just in response to Martin's question suggestion there, I haven't stuck to, I've already put a couple of comments on the board, but I haven't stuck to one of those sectors because I
okay.
personally have found it helpful to kind of go, oh, I can think of one for that sector, I can think of one for that, but
That's
I don't
brilliant.
know if that's what you want to get out
No,
of
that's
this for all of
brilliant.
us here, Hewell. So another one I've put up there is about process and robotics
great.
there. So
No,
I
no,
reckon
that's fine, Andrea.
environment will be weighing refuse as it comes out of people's houses.
Mm.
Oh,
No, that's
okay.
if
That's
you
wonderful.
can add something to more than one sector, that's brilliant.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
And that's
So-
interesting for me, Hugh, because I was thinking picking one of the sectors would help, but actually what Angie is demonstrating is actually having that ability to tack
Mhm.
around
Okay.
is her more helpful. And we're just going to take that idea now into, this is what we've been talking about. This is where Andrea's been dropping her work. So I think if we just refer back to the structure of the board, I've put at the top a business from one of the sectors, and I can see some movement around there. And I think, Nick, for instance, if we use this as an example, Nick, you've come into the board, you've landed here. If I just zoom in down here, you've landed yourself within management and administration. I think you've chosen one of the sectors and a business within that. You've put on a bit of technology, which is your robotic widget or bit, whatever we're going to call it, your robot.
Yeah.
And you've also put an opportunity around customized holidays. So if you just have an explainer of that, whilst I just help Bryce out, and I'll come back to sharing the board.
Okay, so the thing that stood out for me was the economic modeling and tourism. And for me, because I come from a marketing background and I try to stay on top of the technology, there seemed to be a synergy between the personalization of tourism, you know, both in how it's marketed, but also potentially how you would, how holidays may look in the future. So, you know, linking back to what Bryce had said earlier about tension and, you know, how there's a challenge between people accepting certain technology as it moves forward. We can look at social media and how they use your personal data at the moment. But the methodology would be to, again, if we are providing data, how can we best use that to provide a tailored service to an audience? In this case, it would be somebody looking for holidays, or to, you know, allow almost like links between specialized tourism businesses, you know, that can then easily target or provide and notify interested individuals of, you know, bespoke holidays and customize those further without having to have elaborate processes such as make a phone call, send an email, etc., to build up the customization. It can almost be automated based on the volume of data within somebody's within somebody's profile.
Yeah,
so that's interesting.
Yeah, and can I develop that thought then, Nick? Because I want to use that as an example to pull through. The title on this afternoon's session is Financial Impact. So we're going through the different prompts and the layers. So live in the moment in front of us all, could you bring on, I'm defining financial impact as a measure and a money symbol. Now at this point, I didn't set Carl up for this, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Carl, but from what, well, I do in a way, in the way that Nick's described that, if you could just guide Nick's hand, you're guiding Nick's hand with regard to the measure of how we might measure that robotic introduction and the financial impact of that. So we're seeking from you just to verbalize a narrative around the connection that I would like Nick to translate onto the board. Is that okay, Carl?
I think I understand. I think so. So the financial impact of Nick's idea of,
yes, please, yeah,
automatically sending people what their preferences might be for holidays. Have I got that right, Nick?
Yeah, it's tailoring holidays and sort of linking suppliers with customers in a bi-directional type format.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, I guess straight off the first financial impact will be the fact that you're probably going to get more holidays being purchased because people are seeing more what they like, what they want to see. So for example, if they like the holidays in the Bahamas, And then this is being able to be automated. The more that they see that, the more tempted they're going to be to purchase those holidays. So that's it from a kind of a revenue point of view, but also you've got the cost saving kind of point of view, where the historic method is you've got people sat in travel agents on the phones searching left, right and center to try and help people and guide people in the right direction. Whereas I think Nick's suggesting that robotics could do that job for them, and automate that whole process. And then that could probably take it even further. If the automation of that is done, then the booking of that is done, followed on, and then all the financial documents that follow that can also be automated as well. I mean, I've actually got a client that has done something in the travel industry that kind of eliminates, when you go on the travel agents and they give you a pack about that thick, it kind of eliminates that. It's all done on one app, and it saves each travel agent in the region of £6,000 a year. So I'm going off on a slight tangent there, but you can see how it follows all the way through. And at each stage of that customer journey, there's always an opportunity to introduce robotics, automation, digitalization, whatever you want to refer to it as, to save cost, but also add value to the end user as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Nick. In fact, what Nick has been talking about, we're already seeing some of this. It might be subliminal, we don't realize it, but there are algorithms already in social media that look at what your behavior is and try and funnel you to decide on what they think you want them to be sharing with you. So we're already gone down this road with robotics in some way.
Can I just think example?
Sorry. Carry on, Tinchin.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to give a live example to that. The most recent example to financial impact of not catching up with technology or robotics in the tourism industry. We've seen it with the Thomas Cook example. Obviously, yes. Thomas Cook, such a big firm, had to close down the business because they couldn't catch up with the robotics or the technological investment acceleration. So now we are hearing the news that the latest news are Thomas Cook are coming back on the digital platform rather than being on the high street and trying to catch up with. But actually, Nick touched on customization these holidays for people and tourism industry. And that actually proves us a point that importance of robotics even in tourism.
And if I can come in there on the back of that as well and kind of go, great to be able to kind of take some of the cost out of things. But of course, then if you're taking that cost out and you're taking that personal service out, then do you get a high rate of redundancies in there? So actually, do you end up with a greater proportion of the population not having the readies in order to fund the holidays? However, let's flip that the other way from a HR people perspective. This is more about moving from a hands-on process to more a kind of knowledge management industry. And I think that's very much one of the directions that HR and the people side has to be anticipating and thinking about how it attracts people, retains people, recruits people into that kind of knowledge industry space.
Yeah, I'd agree with Andrea on that. I had an interesting conversation. It was my father actually, and we were comparing notes from how businesses were run, when he was actively involved in companies and sort of my perception of how it's done today. The observation he made was that, yes, we can automate, we can bring in robots, technology is great and it's all fun, but there's a real danger around technology, which is the more technology that we bring in, the more we lose the more we lose the value of the most performant computers that exist, which is the human mind.
Yes.
There's something that you cannot automate everything as well as what a human brain can do. So what this implies in terms of a people and sort of behind the scenes, from that behind the scenes aspect, is that you're now going to have to bring people in and train them to such a degree that they understand the processes and how things fit, and they're able to interpret that into what is essentially a robotic language for all intents and purposes, programming the robots to do their part. But the demand is going to change because where we may have had people doing simpler, more repetitive functions.
Yes.
Now we're going to be looking for people that are
Yes.
thinking more complex, but not doing those activities as
Yeah.
repetitively as before. So it's going to change the nature of the types of staff and level that they're going to work in terms of the
Yeah.
skill sets and then a
Yeah.
whole host of things.
That's right. So it has implications for talent attraction and talent management.
Correct.
And
One
I've
of the
put
problems
that,
you
it's
must just-
interesting you say that, Andrew, because I've just placed, I know you're in full flow there, but I saw that as a challenge for management around the talent. Is that fair?
Yes, I think you're right. It is, and because of the way I personally tend to be wired, it's also that it's that link into it being an opportunity for your talent pool. So actually coming into workspaces where they're not just expected to press buttons and make widgets, but it's actually to engage brains. So that could be an advantage and an opportunity in terms of attracting people to your organization for hiring.
Yeah, that's great. That connection, and I wanted to showcase that point because clearly in the time we're sometimes limited with what we can showcase. But what's happened there is a connection that Andrea's made in full flow that somebody else, in this case me, can translate, unpack it into a challenge and an opportunity. Once it's exposed in that way, we can do more with it. I really want to come back on the board. There's a lot in there. We've got a few minutes here, so I'm up for you for directing our attention to anything that's caught your eye in time that would be good use of our conversation.
No, I'm very happy with the contributions that we've had, actually. The one area that we haven't really touched on has been partners and suppliers. How does that all, how can our, the industries we're involved with, how can they start partnering up with the robotics industry in order to help themselves to some of the money that's available? So,
yeah.
I'm thinking hard. And
something's
what's
happening.
useful about that, Hugh, is that we're using the board as a bit of a gap analysis. And I think, did you put on the personal chips or was that somebody else?
Yeah, I put on the personal chips. It was as a response to some of the work that some of the stuff that's being mentioned by Nick. People are talking about everybody having a personal chip on them, so we will know all of their personal data. That was what I was referring to there.
Can I just add one thing while we have the board up there, which is something that sort of occurred to me?
Yeah, sure.
We're looking at the business on the board, as a whole, and sort of identifying the challenges and opportunities. But one of the challenges, I think, when you're looking at and we're thinking of the finance of things, is, and I think Carl would appreciate this as well, it's how well is your house in order first? Because I'm looking at these things and I practically know the cost implications of innovation and what it means to the business, how it affects the operations, how it affects the people. And the thing that sort of stands out to me is the obvious solution would be to have some kind of a budget set aside for research and development or innovation or whatever the case might be. But then, the challenge of that is you can't really do that until you have your basic finances in order first. Is that a reasonable assessment?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I agree with that, Nick. I was laughing when you started to talk there because I had a conversation yesterday. One of my clients had booked in a kind of a strategy session with me to talk about the future growth of the business and things like that. And then he called me to say, I want to cancel that meeting. Okay, fair enough. And I put a post out on LinkedIn about people doing what they like to do and not necessarily what they have to do. And he actually saw that LinkedIn post and said, that's why I've cancelled the meeting, because I've had 3 conversations with you, Carl, in the last 3 months that I've got a pile of invoices that you keep nagging me to get onto zero, and I've not done that. So how on earth can we talk strategy when I've not got the basics in place? So he's now spending the time between Christmas and New Year to get that process automated. We can completely automate his financial process. Once that's been done, then you can start looking at the nice, sexy stuff, the strategy and things like that, and where can we take the business. But I think it's a great comment that you've got to get your house in order first, get the basics right, get the foundations right, and then build from there.
I love the fact you're reading off my typing, Carl. It's almost like I could have written anything. I don't know whether it's subliminal or Derek
I
Brown.
honestly wasn't looking at that.
Well, you mentioned process and house in order, so I think your
Right.
third eye was obviously following the script.
It must have been.
But there is something in that the way we understand, and because I'm exposing how I'm understanding what you're saying, I'm making a statement that is a management task potentially to develop the base case and getting your house in order. And it is management, and it could be then who we're going to use to do that. And actually, I've not got time to do this, but I could make a connection into partners, because you might not be able to do that in-house. That client of yours was actually using the accountability through your relationship as a partner. I think
Yeah.
you would consider yourself more as a partner than a supplier, but
Absolutely, yeah.
partner, I think you might use that. I think partner and supplier is beautifully set out on Big Pick with it. Being more of a partner relationship than a supplier, that they may need help getting their house in order, so it would then set off another opportunity how we're going to do that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Any others we can go to in the time? We didn't do the checks or the refuse. Should we do your refuse, Andrea?
Really don't mind. My thinking there was the link with finance. You know, at the moment our houses are rated, are they not, whether we are homeowners or tenants, and pay local councils for services, among which is refuse collection. And I'm just, and the link therefore with the environment, the push towards that, you know, trying to reduce carbon use, increase recycling, reuse. So will we move to a position where our refuse is weighed, and indeed, you know, the use of technology in terms of us each having tamper-proof receptacles that are then weighed, and we are charged according to it? I don't know. That was just where my head went.
Interesting, man.
And
There
I'll
are all-
put that in sales there, Andrea, if I was setting that up, because it's almost like, why have I put it there? It's because on the customer journey, the value created by the council or the company collecting is the kind of delivery and operation. So it's got to be a because it's like a fact-finding activity, which I put in sales
Yeah,
with the drone scale.
right. It would actually, I think it would have to be very much a feasibility study, because of course there are huge moral issues that lie behind that, because, you know, one might have a large family and yet a relatively low income. So are you therefore marginalizing a family like that potentially even more than society might already do so to some extent, on the basis that they are being charged for the amount of stuff that they chuck out? So there are all sorts of moral questions that would lie behind that. But, you know, we said that lots of things couldn't happen that did. Well, guess what? I reckon that within the next 50 years that will have happened.
Well,
Yeah.
will
And
there,
on
will
to
there be
that,
means tested, maybe?
Yeah.
there would also be the opportunity for a different look at it. So, you know, that data that you're acquiring from the bin and judging by weight, local councils, or if the private companies buy them, whatever the case might be, they can use that as a resource management indicator. So while, yes, there would be some questions around cost, what they can do is offset that cost by saying we only need to pick up in specific areas on these particular days.
Yes.
So there's a savings there.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
And
yeah,
that could
absolutely.
be brought in via the partner relationship. So I think that's that insight there into the way we think, and not everybody's been able to contribute to that, but where the insight is in the simulation is that by providing a shared framework in the way that we assimilate and understand information, and we're given prompts are really powerful. So what Huel did is he set us up a prompt. He asked us to focus in a certain area. You then give people the ability to make and do. So give them the knowledge of the symbols, give them the same board. It's interesting how we saw Carl there, maybe without even realizing it, and there must be some coincidence to it, almost reading off process and house in order as I was applying the symbols for him. And the fact that we are influenced by others within our midst and our group without even realizing it, how we're seeing information. But if it's stuck in our heads or on our pads, sat in our sheds or at home in our garden, we can't see what each other's thinking. So by putting it in a shared area, throw in the prompts, in this case today, the financial impacts of innovation and robotics. There's some been a lot of ideas and some gems that we would take forward, and that forms a simulation. So we reach the end of the formal proceedings bang on time, but we don't close the room down. We like conversation, we like stories. So if you do want to come in and we haven't heard from you yet, please indicate with your hand
Can we
up or
ask
wave on
Neil,
screen.
as somebody who's here for the first time, have you got any thoughts on the whole process that we went through, Neil?
Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm
Yeah.
muted. Yeah. Well, it's a planning process, isn't it, and an ideas process. From what I can see, I'm more on the delivery side. If I'm honest, that's been my background. Been involved with automation since 1980, but in more industrial than anything, actually, within the manufacturing sector.
Did some of the stuff we were talking about make sense moving forward, Neil?
Yeah, definitely. But you see what it's used for now compared to what it was in 1980 even. You can see the quality is so much better, the repeatability, just in the manufacturing sector. You see now it's being used for packing things like bricks, which would have been a manual job in the past. They're looking at bricklaying now with robots. A lot of farming, where before it was purely industrial, making car parts, etc. And it was about getting rid of the mundane jobs and being repeatable and very efficient, of course.
Well, you can think of the industrial printers that they've got now as well. Even,
yes, of course,
build whatever.
3D printers, yeah.
And for me, Neil, that kind of list of examples that you've just given, absolutely, you see those out there at play. But I just wonder sometimes if therefore the people who are at the sharp end of those new technologies, those robotics coming in, kind of go, oh, why do we have this? Why did this need to come along? And I think that a platform like this enables a discussion so that people who might otherwise have gone, oh, why have they brought this in, kind of can engage with, okay, there is a different side to this, and there might be other opportunities for me, because we are all driven by the good old what's in it for me bit, and it might lead to that conversation very nicely.
The other thing is, where I am now, we're our biggest customer, which is a Ford plant just outside Liverpool. There was 3,000 people there in the early 70s.
Yeah.
There's 500 there now.
Yeah, exactly.
But you got to say that unemployment is still low.
Which is what
they're retraining into other fields.
Yeah, it's gone into other things like knowledge management, etc. But it's having the conversation with people so that they see those opportunities. And
all automation needs programmers and maintenance people still, etc.
Yeah, that's it. And that was a much better way of asking.
Is it okay for me to ask Carl to give us some sort of a summary, as we invited you on to talk about what we were doing? What did you think about the direction we went and the things that we said about the robotics in the future?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I liked how I think it was Bryce that mentioned quite early on about the resistance to robotics, and I think that's a natural thing that we, when somebody mentions we've got this new process, there's a natural fear to, oh my God, what's going to happen? Are we going to lose our jobs, etc. But then I think Andrea made a really great point about you shouldn't try not to look at it that way. See the opportunity. There's always something that you can do better. There's always more that you can do. There's more value that you can add, and it helps to upskill people. The robotics technology for me is there to support, to help you provide more value. In the past, it's been man hours just getting the basics done, the compliance element done. When you can take that away, you see things from a different angle, and then you're able to add so much more value to your customer. So when you bring your robotics in, for me, it's always saying, okay, great, that's brilliant. Let's park that. What else can we do? How can we add more value? And better talent and things like that being brought in, I think were great points.
Just looking at your particular example, Carl, where you're telling us about your client,
Yeah.
you know, in a very simplistic way and answered within sort of 60 seconds. He probably carries his phone with him everywhere he goes. He's not doing his basic bookkeeping, which is to say that he's logging down his expenses.
Yeah.
Well, you tie in your camera and an app on your phone. You utilize Zapier, which costs you in the region of about 20 quid a month, give or
Yeah.
take, you know, and that ties straight into Xero as a software
Yeah.
package. Why? Because Xero's got an open API.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we've enabled him to utilize robotics and to tick off one of his, I need to do this before I chat to Carl, or Carl's going to give me a right good dressing down again. But that, you know, that's kind of the way to look at it. And when we look at history and we look at how we've been educated, you know, since sort of pre-wars and all the rest of it, you know, it's become very industrial, very battery hen type style, very sort of production education. There is always going to be that concern and tension. I think it's our responsibility to sort of educate others in the sense that, yes, I don't think you realize how much skill you actually have. And this is sort of areas that are only starting to come into fields such as marketing, you know, business management through methodologies, be it Prince2 or whatever the case might be, Agile. We're starting to see it with, like, I really enjoyed your website and looking at your approach to accounting, you know, to bookkeeping. So we have to adapt and change how we look at our education to offset this sort of historically inherited production line sense of this is how we go through life.
Yeah.
It's
Thank
just
you,
all
Nick.
changing. It's becoming very much the individual.
You've taken away my
Sorry.
summary, but it doesn't matter.
Sorry,
Can I
Bill,
ask
Bill,
Carl one more
you-
question? Can I ask Carl
yeah.
one more question, please?
Yes.
I can't put my hand up, and Andrew's done it so well. I can't find out how to put my hand up, which I'm really upset about.
it's like this.
Yeah, thanks. I've just done it. So that wasn't the question. I'm going to find out later. When you gave me the definition of robotics early, Hugh, and I accepted it and moved on with it, something's just come back to me. We talked earlier about robotics replacing something, but when Carl was talking there, something else came to me, and Bryce might like this because there was a blog he did some time ago which reminded me. When we look at business models and you see the big picture on the page, what if it's not a replacement? What if that robotic and that automation isn't just a replacement? It is a game changer. The catfish, as you called it, I think, Bryce, or something of that type, something that is uncovered within the business that wasn't even known about. It brings to the fore some value. It actually changes the essential makeup of the business. So it maybe isn't just replacement. I would dedicate an element of that conversation to being more creative in the whole business model changing with robotics, because it could be that fundamental. Is that fair?
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely.
I still feel it will replace something within your business, but that's a good way of looking at it. Can I ask Bill, because Bill hasn't said anything? Would you like to share some thoughts with us, Bill, before we close it all down?
Well, having gone through innovation in finance, one of the key things that I looked at was, can you give me some money to build an incubator? And taking back Carl to the accountancy, I came up with a sum of money that I thought was going to be purposeful for the business. But what Matt just said is really interesting. And Bryce, we have to transcend and include everything we've done in order to get to another level so we can produce what we want to. So don't dismiss what we've done previously, which you're all saying, but we've actually gone to a different place now, and we are bringing people on board. It's about like they're now going another step on the ladder, and they're bringing that with them, and that's the encouragement they need.
Excellent, thank you, Alex. I know that you're muted. Would you like to share with us your thoughts on today?
I would. Yes, I would. I
Fantastic.
really enjoyed it today. I liked the history. I thought that was really interesting and kind of gave the whole thing a kind of what's the word? Context. Right, thank you. And I personally like robotics, or I prefer the word automation because I understand it better. But I do realise that it can be at the expense of the human. And so that is one big kind of cross against it for me, because
it's one of the big challenges, isn't it?
really is. And I mean, if it could be used to benefit humans primarily all the time across the board, that would be great. But it doesn't necessarily do that.
But isn't this though why having a conversation like this enable us to begin to think that if we automate, roboticize the things that we can, it enables us to do a darn sight better, more focused job where only human beings cut it.
Yeah. Yes, I do agree with that as well. But then, you know, there is only so much speed that a human being can go at.
Yeah.
Our nervous system does not allow the speed to, you know what I mean? So
I do know what you mean. Yeah.
I've got a little anecdote on that. As Bryce again knows, I have dabbled with a little bit of automation in the LinkedIn area, and one of the suppliers there came up with a phrase which I wish I could remember word for word, but it was along the lines of only automate what you can do in a human way at scale. And it was quite a clumsy phrase, but it stuck with me. And things stick with me for lots of different reasons, but there's a point behind it, which is even themselves were saying, if you can automate, it isn't always a good idea. Only automate if you can do the human part at scale, which I think might be touching a little bit what Alex is saying. Sometimes it can get you into a bit of a mischief, because as we were going around the board, I think if we'd spent more time, we would have connected more to the customer journey and the customer experience. That potentially that's where the stakes become a lot higher, because if you get something wrong on that customer journey, then the customer or client expects one thing and gets another, that's where the additional challenges might come in. And that's where a conversation with a wider team could be a customer service agent saying, but if we do that, you know, Neil, I was hearing about your industrial sized innovation and things that could be brought in from the top of the shop. And Andrea asked the question I wanted to much better, which is, I was going to say, do all the ideas come in from the top of the shop, or do they come from other areas? And actually, it's good to involve people, even if it's not their ideas, so they know what's coming. They may come up with a challenge to say, but if you do that, the knock-on effect is going to be this. And I love a bit of systems thinking, and that sits behind big picture. So that's been one of the takeaways and realizations for me.
Yeah,
well, I know you're going to switch off before long. So I would just like to say thank you to all of you for contributing to this. It's been awesome to hear what you've got to say, and thanks very much, Carl, for coming on and helping us out. And it's great to see you on there as well, Neil. Thank you very much. Over to you, Martin.
Yeah, thank you. It's over. Nick the elf has dressed up specially for this, and he did say we'd finish the 54th webinar and the hamster wheel that has been 2020 Friday afternoons at 4 o'clock with a short song from his favourite karaoke. Just a line from it, Nick. Yeah, he's on mute, which is very clever, and I can see what he's done there. Have a wonderful Christmas, and that's brilliant. Please look out for a change of gear in the new year. Every 2 weeks or so, focused on the offers, and we love to have people back to talk around things. It's a demonstration, it's a simulation. If you go to yourbigpick.com/finance, you'll see what Hugh's got on offer there with regard to financial freedom for businesses, involving the wider team in the financial conversation. I wish you all well. Have a great weekend. I'll send you something next week for feedback, and look after yourselves.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers, everybody.